You join us, gentle viewer, as we look at the MSI MPG X570S Carbon EK X motherboard.
Take a breath.
Not many.
Wait, I didn't get that.
Could you do it again, Leo? Only this time do it right.
I'm fast.
Which in essence is the MSI blah motherboard. And EK accessories, EK monoblock, that's the big stuff, and then we've got various bits and pieces in the bottom that we ain't so much interested in, and then we get this.
That has some weight to it.
Oh yes.
See, I'm not particularly familiar with monoblocks.
No, you see, that's actually why I'm doing this. So we're doing an unboxing. Well, essentially we've done that.
Done. There you go, thanks for watching.
And but I figured that you probably weren't that au fait with monoblocks. So what you have here, it says casually ripping open the thing, is
Lots of static on the mic.
Carbon motherboard. They supply it without the VRM heatsink.
Okay.
Which I actually don't like, because that heatsink can't cost much. And by taking that off, you can't then use it as a regular motherboard without the EK hardware.
That's a fair point, because if you watch any liquid cooling build guide, isn't the advice to basically just test it and stress test in an air-cooled system to start with?
The idea you first bolt it all together in a hardline tube system, this, that and the other, with your M.2 somewhere under there,
yeah.
And then you fire it up and it's like yeah, that can be bad. Let's have a brief glance at what the oh god, hang on, I have to have a knife for that. Nope, I can beat it open.
Just use brute force.
Try not to.
So wait, what is this? Oh, the
This
accessory
says loop accessories. I'm just wondering what it actually is, whether it's a leak tester or...
Ah.
No, it's a leak tester, right. Okay, so it's the same as if you look over your right shoulder, that pink box there.
This thing.
That's it. It's one of those. So what it essentially is a bicycle pump. It's for plugging into your loop to check, which is about 30 odd quid's worth of hardware. Nifty piece of kit. So when your loop is assembled, you plug into it in the fill port on the reservoir or some such, and you basically confirm it's holding pressure about an atmosphere.
Okay.
And if it holds that, it's all good. It means you don't have that awful Bitwit Carl experience of turn on the power and have a jet of coolant shooting across your power supply.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Right, I'm going to open this.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
In a less particular fashion. I break the label.
That's right. There's an aircraft overhead, so you can make as much noise as you like with that.
Yeah, thank you. So that's got a weight to it. So that's nickel-based copper by the looks of it, I'm guessing.
It is nickel-plated copper. Yes,
sorry, yeah.
correct, with RGB. That's why you got that
taped
there. So it is as simple as, despite the fact it's a hefty, great big slab of 4 female threads around the CPU socket, and then 4 or more threads for the VRMs. Oh god, that's sticker.
Oh no.
So basically you put the block, obviously CPU in first.
Yeah.
Loads of thermal pads and so on, which is always hysterical. It's like doing a block on a graphics card, but in essence that, and then a bunch of screws from the back.
Okay, so yeah.
And then you plumb it in, and I'm hoping that's... Oh, it is a peel, good. That's right, I thought for a moment it was a bubble in their carbon decal. And then you're good to go. And the pricing for these is take the price of the motherboard and basically add on £100, euros, dollars for the monoblock, which is about the price they charge for the monoblock anyway.
Okay.
You get the leak tester, which is about 30, and it comes in the thing. I just wish to goodness they came with the stock heatsink.
Yeah.
But
even if they were just supplied as part of the bundle, not necessarily installed, so you can choose something. Yeah.
But putting that to one side, and then you end up with this. So that's that. X570S. What is it, Luke?
Yeah, so I guess...
Is it a new chipset?
Good question.
It's not, is it?
Technically, it's not. And technically, there's no such thing as X570S. And I had this confirmed with our AMD contact, that technically there's no such thing as X570S. It's basically just something that the motherboard vendors are using to try and distinguish between the silence boards, which are fanless on the chipset, and the old ones, which are generally not fanless on the chipset. And I say generally because you do have the Gigabyte one, which is fanless on the chipset, so the X570 Extreme.
Yep.
And also
£700 at launch.
many pounds. I know that much. Yeah, we have used that. It's a nice board. I think James used it in a build recently too. And you did have the Crosshair 8, if I remember correctly, Dark Hero from Asus, which didn't have the X570S.
Basically, there's two models of X570 motherboards passively cooled.
Yes, until this batch of X570S boards come.
Right, and then B550 came along, which is technically an inferior chipset because it doesn't do PCI Express Gen 4 across the whole thing.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything on the chipset
just
for Gen 4.
Processor.
Just the processor, which obviously gives you one SSD.
But it means that the chipset on B550 is passively cooled.
Yeah.
So therefore, we have been very happy with Zen 3 processors on B550, even though technically it's inferior, because it does away with the
absolutely, I love B550, and that's one of the main reasons. If you need more Gen 4, then fine, X570. But the fan, particularly on some of the less good designed boards, shall we say, for X570, has been annoying. I think everybody can agree on that.
How fast does a little fan spin?
So I've seen some of them on certain brands that we're not going to...
It's been very diplomatic.
It's been very diplomatic, of course, yeah. Well, there's one of them actually was particularly bad. So I know the Tai Chi, I think the ASRock Tai Chi was a particularly bad fan, and I think they actually did a revision, a Razer edition with a different fan. It was so bad. And that was, I can't remember the exact number, but some of them are in the order of like 6,000 RPM.
I was thinking 7 actually, but yeah.
Some have gone as high as that,
Which when it's a tiddly little thing that's all, frankly, it's all hub and no blades.
Exactly.
And the thing's howling away to attempt to shift a bit of air. Because the chipset, how much power approximately does the chipset draw or heat have to shed in watts?
So it was never really confirmed, was it? And it was always the if this, if that, if this. But it was somewhere in the, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere, wasn't it in the order of like 12 to 25 or something on the high end, I think. So kind of similar.
In mainstream use, I thought about 15, exactly.
Yeah, and I think
not a lot of heat.
It's not a massive amount, given that if you look at a board like this, and all the boards these days have got the, depending on your perspective, perhaps pointless, perhaps nice and cool and useful, covers. There's plenty of surface area there to dump that amount of heat. But I think everybody was perhaps cautious with what would happen with the new chipset. Gen 4 was brand new at the time for the consumer market, so perhaps there was an overly cautious approach. I'm just surprised it's taken us, X570 is just over 2 years old now. I'm surprised it's taken us about 2 years to see the first proper passive ones come out en masse.
So X570S, which when it was, because you've got a couple of boards and you'll have reviews coming along in the fullness of time, but it's not a launch of a new chipset, although we both saw news of people saying new chipset from AMD.
Yeah.
But it appears to be an AMD X570, the same as the previous X570. But they've basically given the motherboard manufacturers a spec to work to. And provided you do this, everything will be happy. And the S is for silent, we assume.
Yeah, so the S is just something that's just driven by the marketing teams and the motherboard vendors. There's nothing specific that AMD is doing.
Stand for other things as well.
No comment.
And similarly, if P was for passive, it could also stand. In fact, basically, in our alphabet, it's terrible. And
E for individual. So you got P, you got I, you got S. No, let's not go there.
But I imagine that they have got the genuine issue, which is I don't know how many M.2s this has, but it could be 2, 3, might even be 4.
I would imagine 3.
Right.
Yeah.
And if each M.2 is belting out Gen 4, that is belting out a load of heat, then that's adding to the equation as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Take it all together. And here's the thing about liquid cooling. When you stick your monoblock on there, motherboard stood upright, whether you have your rad in the front of the case, which would be here, or in the roof, or both, airflow through the rads will inevitably be good. Airflow over the foot of the board could be absolutely hopeless because liquid cooling your graphics card yields so much better results. I've done the Fractal Design Torrent now twice. I did a review of it and I did a revisited in a different form. And changing from liquid cooled graphics to air cooled graphics, the temp of the graphics card goes up 30 Celsius. You can get your graphics card down to 50 if you liquid cool it.
Yeah.
But of course it means there's no airflow here.
Yeah, liquid cooling on the graphics card is particularly good.
Lovely.
It's particularly
really good.
Yeah.
I like it a
but
lot.
Like you say, you got no airflow, and the reality is you're probably not going to be going for a CPU-only loop these days. I'd imagine people still doing it's probably quite common, but the benefits
It's
are
easier.
perhaps it's easier and
Plus-
it's cheaper, but the benefits are not really there compared to all-in-ones, which are pretty good these days, to be fair.
Today, whichever it's Friday, isn't it? Recording this,
Yes.
my Lianli O11 Air Mini review went up about an hour ago, and in that there's a moment where which like Luke won't have seen yet. Don't know if he'll ever see it. Who knows? There's a moment when I'm installing an M.2 and a processor, and I just say, when I'm installing these parts, I forget to speak to the camera. And in fact, I often forget to breathe. A funny thing, when I'm installing a CPU or an SSD, I often go quiet. In fact, sometimes I forget to breathe. Believe you me, when you're putting a blooming block on a graphics card you've bought money, you've paid 800 quid for or whatever.
Yeah. Certainly a hold the breath moment there.
It's all of that going on. Thinking, have I got the thermal pads in the right order, peeled off the films on both sides, done the thing, and you're putting it on, knowing perfectly where you're putting this significant chunk, I mean, they weigh the same as that, significant chunk of metal directly on your GPU die.
That's over a kilo, isn't it?
It's about a kilo. It's because they're quite dense, they always feel more. And I noticed that's got a little...
or 2 pounds if you're American friends. 2.2 pounds for our American friends.
So a kilo. And it's got a little flow meter in it as well.
Yes, okay, that's quite cool.
Yeah. So...
Will that make any noise? No. Is the noise going to be negligent for that?
You won't hear it.
Not negligent, negligible.
No,
yeah, okay.
you won't hear the flow meter. No.
Okay, fair enough. Because that would be ironic.
Yeah, but it's apart from cooling your quietening your PC, liquid cooling this is great. But the irony of the situation is that how much liquid cooling does your AMD processor really require? Not so much.
Yeah, to be fair, even so that we use the 16 core, the 5950X, which is the biggest, baddest one for the mainstream AMD processors. And as far as temperatures go, it's not the highest temperature one because it is this weird situation where the lower core count ones, higher thermal density, they run a bit hotter.
Luke sent me the 12 core to use in some of the builds I've done. Why was that, Luke? And I see that fella pulling 142 watts package and typically 80 Celsius, but with a Noctua on it, it was running at 70.
Okay.
Which tells you what you need to know about a slab of Austrian air cooling.
Austrian muscle.
It's like having Schwarzenegger on your processor.
Telling it to be cool.
We do.
That's a poor accent. I'm gonna have to apologise in the comment section of that. Arnie, if you're watching, I do apologise.
But
yeah. But yeah, you're right. So the 12 core is particularly hot.
Yes.
I think the 8 core, but the 16 core is not too bad. It runs a little bit less power, but obviously you're spreading the thermal, the power over more CPU cores.
Yes.
You've got to be careful with your terminology. But realistically, you can push kind of 200 plus watts very comfortably on a 16 core. But even there, you're probably going to be fine for all-in-one liquid cooling.
And yet you stick your graphics card there, and whether it's an RX 6800 XT, which is about 250 watts, or your RTX 3080.
You're doing 250 easy, aren't you, on a graphics card? Yeah. So you're pushing way up.
The Lianli that as I say, the video went up. I was running the Core i9 11900K.
That's a thirsty beast.
In liquid cooled mode in the BIOS, so you can pick a cooler. It's like, yep, one of those.
Yeah.
And the RTX 3080, and it was sucking 580 watts at the wall socket.
Yeah.
Running Cinebench and Time Spy combined.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A single 280mm radiator.
It did all that on a single 280.
It did all that on a single rad, and I did it actually. I was being quite mean to the O11 Air Mini because I thought, you're a good little case. You can flow air. You can. Let's chuck everything at it and just be utterly unreasonable. There's space in there for a second rad. And I thought, let's go for it.
Leo being utterly unreasonable, I would have never imagined that.
In a scientific way, though.
Oh, of course.
And it did it. It was just like, well, fair enough. And that was pretty much a worst case scenario for it. So it's like, yep, that works.
See, liquid cooling's a funny one because, like you've just said, a single 280, and my first thought was, really? But that's not really fair for me to say that because the one I always fall back to is, do you remember the R9 295X2? Which was...
Never saw one. Never got my bits on one.
I had one. So
sorry,
I had one. I had one for a long time.
No,
so the 295X2 was a pair of AMD Hawaii R9 290X GPUs on a single board. So it was back when dual GPUs were a thing and you had onboard Crossfire. But critically, they were overclocked compared to their single GPU counterparts. So before that, when you had like the 4870X2, the 6990, all these other ones, they were always underclocked, always a big compromise. This was overclocked, so this was better than a pair of individual cards in Crossfire, and that was cooled via I think it was an Acertec pump block unit and a single 120, if I remember correctly, rad. A single 120, and it was like 500-600 watts for the GPU, to the point where you had to have specific, and I want to say specific, good power cables to feed the dual 8 pins, if I remember correctly. And that was a single 120 rad with a good fan. But that is always my benchmark. So when someone says, yeah, I put 500 watts through a 280, and I'm like, huh? No, but then you go back to that and you think, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
No, right, because people often say the rule of thumb is you need a 120mm unit plus a 120mm unit for each other thing, which typically means CPU or GPU. So really what they're saying is a 240 for your CPU, a 360 for CPU and GPU, which is frankly nonsense. Because this is going back to before these parts drew so much juice.
Yeah.
And we've got rumours of AMD processors coming up with 175 watt TDP, I think. Anyway, stepping up, I think, is the thing, some beefy ones. But anywho, so this is an X570S, which is not a new chipset, but it is passively cooled with a monoblock, which I will be doing an actual review. However, the actual review of X570S is going to be done by Luke, which is right and proper because he is Mr. AMD. So there we go. That's my new shiny kit that's arrived today.
It's very shiny.
And it's mine, all mine.
I like the look of that board. I will say that much. So it looks like a nice board.
It's good. And the thing is that this Carbon X with the EK is about 60 or 70 euros, pounds, dollars more expensive than the EK Z590 board. It is actually selling at a significant premium for the AMD over the Intel.
Okay, that's interesting. Because there seems to be this perhaps old-fashioned, if you want to be politically correct way of saying it, idea that the Intel boards always command a price premium, but the AMD platform is perhaps a better platform these days, depending on your perspective.
This is saying to me, apart from the fact, obviously, the Intel 10th, 11th gens are hitting end of life. They're already being discounted because obviously 12th gen is imminent, although as to whether they'll be better, different question. But this is enthusiast. This is pure enthusiast territory. This is latest AMD with, although as you said, 2-year-old chipset. Zen 3.
Zen 3, yeah. Perhaps
monoblock.
3D Zen 3.
That's
soon.
right.
Yeah.
So the 5 of you out there are into this.
Send us a personal email. Give us a call. Yeah. Here's an interesting and perhaps unfair question. If you were buying for your own system right now, editing, gaming, whatever, would you be happy spending money on the AMD platform, knowing that that's lasted a long time, it's been around for a while, but there's probably something new around the corner, like AM5, not too many months away?
Oh, well, my personal PC is Threadripper 2000.
2000
on X399, and I built it with a Threadripper 1000, and then when the current Threadrippers came out and all the 2000 were discounted, I went from 12 core Threadripper 1000 to 12 core Threadripper 2000.
Okay, yeah.
Which is slightly unusual, I'll grant you, but that's what I did in my own personal thing. Basically, I spent a bunch of cash on SSD storage because video editing just gets through stacks of it. And I am waiting for the new Threadrippers to come along, at which point I will seriously consider going to Threadripper 5000, at which point I'll seriously consider going to Threadripper 3000, which will obviously be a new platform for me. So the TRX 40.
Which is a fantastic platform.
Exactly. And that's when I'll do the 32 core or whatever dance.
the wallet cruncher.
Exactly, because then you're in the realms, aren't you, of $2,000 for that, or
32 core plus a good board,
plus the board, which is
decent chunk of change.
Yeah, so I have thought about this.
Yeah, okay.
And my answer is I'm currently on Threadripper 2000, and I'm looking to step up to Threadripper 3000.
Okay, so you have no
discounted.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair point. So you have no problems if a platform's kind of near end of life as long as it's functionally sound.
Correct, although I have been slightly surprised that X399, no BIOS updates. If you look at any board, not there's any reason why you would. On my board, there was a third update, which was like 18 months ago.
Okay.
And that's it. I don't know if they can do updates to Windows 11 or whatever. I mean, that's the other thing. My board won't do Windows 11. It just goes TPM what? We ain't got none of that. It's just no. So my computer definitely says no. So not that I'm rushing to get into Windows 11, but I am. I'm on legacy hardware.
Yeah, okay. It was perhaps an unfair question to present to you, but it's always a question asked that why would you spend this much when something new is a few months away? And I'm kind of the opinion that, yeah, maybe sometimes you could hold out, sometimes you could go with the last gen, it's a bit cheaper, but sometimes you just need something now and you want to buy it. And this looks like a perfectly competent board, and Zen 3 we still love.
Well, that's the irony of it also, is that I should actually seriously consider AM4 because I'm on 12 cores of reasonable stuff. This would be 12 or 16 cores of better stuff. Yeah. This would be a serious upgrade from a Threadripper.
It will,
no doubt about it.
It will absolutely blast the Zen plus 12 core Threadripper, yeah. Zen 3 in particular, which is... Yeah, I've already attested my love for Zen 3. I think it's fantastic. Yes.
There we have it. AMD fanboys to the max. Whoops, we really...
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Wrapping this one up and moving on to the next. See you soon.